So what happened with Georgia and Trevor Lawrence? Now this is a complicated thing. Two coaching staffs at Georgia, but we were both there at the time to relive a lot of what happened. We'll have more coming up on this soon at dogpost.com. But I'm joined by Matt DeBerry, Dean Legge from Dogpost, as always. And Matt, we first saw Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it was pretty obvious when he was young. He started going to camps at Georgia when he was, I think, in 8th grade or maybe younger. You may know better. But I have images of Trevor when he was in 8th grade getting ready to go to Cartersville, I think it was, or going into his ninth. Well, he was coming out of 8th grade. And Mike Bobo had him there. He had no hair. And it was a very interesting time at Georgia. There was stability. Mike Bobo was still there, but he grew up a Tennessee guy, if I'm not mistaken. Why don't you give us some background there, and then we'll start asking questions and having some discussion.
Right, and of course, all the latest and the true story about how all of this went down is over on Dog Post. But yeah, we knew Trevor, got to know him before he had the long hair, so we've known him for a long time.
True.
And I covered his recruitment. I lived in Marietta at the time, just a short drive up to Cartersville, so I was pretty clued in. And I was there when he got his first offer. It was actually from Colorado State. Mike Bobo gave it to him, but Georgia
So
fell behind.
Colorado State was his first offer.
That was his first offer, if I remember correctly, and I think I do have that down pretty good. And it was from Mike Bobo, and that was, I guess, the first domino Georgia offered. The day after Dog Night, they had him on campus. Again, that whole story is over on Dog Post that you can read about. He threw really well right next to Jacob Eason and Bailey Hockman, and it was clear that he was. And Jake Fromm, was he? I don't remember him being there. You know probably what? Do. And
I'm not. That's a good question. But let me just jump in and say this. Chad Simmons and I have been around the block for a while, and Chad was working at the same company I was at the time, and we were walking. First of all, it was way too crowded at that Dog Night. We were walking, and Jacob had become the main attraction, and it was Jacob, Bailey Hockman, and Trevor. And Chad and I were walking, and you were seeing the three of them warm up with some other guys. And Trevor was in, what, ninth grade-ish, something like that? Or had he already?
It was 2015, so I think he was going into his sophomore season.
Okay. So they were about to win the state championship at Cartersville. Yep. And, he did not go into his freshman year at Cartersville as a starter, I don't think. I think Joey King was the coach at Cartersville. Is that right?
Yep. And he took over for Miller Forrestall, who went on to be a tight end at Alabama.
So, that's what I was going to say, is that they worked Trevor in at Cartersville. So here he is on the side, and like we knew he was a gifted special player, and we're watching Jacob, and we're watching Bailey Hockman, and you're watching Trevor, and the ball came out a particular way. It was easy for him to do things. And Jacob Eason was not exactly ungifted. I mean, he was a gifted guy. But when you watched Trevor throw, it was evident that he was just as good in terms of arm strength and arm ability as Jacob Eason, who people wouldn't shut up about his arm strength. I mean, he's an NFL quarterback right now, and it was evident he was one then. And that night, it seemed pretty clear to me that if Trevor Lawrence was not going to become an NFL quarterback, there was probably something strange that was going to happen. But there you were, and there we were. And Trevor's warming up, and take it from there.
He left without an offer.
Insane.
They offered him the next morning when he was back at the house. That's how it was told to me. And that is insane, because Schottenheimer watched him closely when they finally found out that he was there at the camp. And he had close eyes on him and all the other quarterbacks. And I couldn't believe that the offer, tweet from Georgia didn't happen later that night. It happened the next day. So they were behind the 8 ball early on. Trevor was not going to Georgia.
Go ahead. Brian Schottenheimer is the worst thing that happened to Georgia in the last 10 years. And that's really saying something. I mean, when this is not in the moment. We're almost 6 years later now. It is insane to me that you would screw things up as much as he did with the quarterbacks. I mean, he is completely does not belong on a college campus. I know that, he works for the Jags, and that's where Trevor's going. And maybe he's better professionally, but the Seahawks just fired. I mean, I don't understand what pixie dust he has that he keeps, moving on like this. But he he did as bad a job as any singular coach as an assistant has done at Georgia in the last 10 years for sure, if not almost back to Kevin Ramsey. And it is insane to me that total negligence for that entire time. I'm not going to rehash starting Fatone Bauta against Florida when you could still win the division. I mean, it was insane to me, Matt, what was going on. And that dog night was, I knew there were problems in the spring, but that dog night cinched it for me. These guys don't know what they're doing. And I love Mark Richt.
It seemed like Brian Schottenheimer had no interest of being there. I'm not sure why he took the job. He didn't want to recruit. I don't think he was a big Sony Michel guy either.
He didn't want to develop players. Do you think Grayson Lambert got better at Georgia when he was the quarterback?
Absolutely.
I mean, Bryce Ramsey was a top 100 quarterback. They had him punting.
Shotty couldn't wait to leave Athens. He was like, "This is not for me. I don't like any of this. I'm out of here." But
huge mistake right there.
Yeah, but Georgia hires Kirby Smart, and he got Georgia back into it. Georgia went from having 0% chance of landing Trevor Lawrence to, at one point, I believe, more than a 50% chance to land him. I thought Georgia was the front runner to land Trevor Lawrence for a little bit there, but Dabo Swinney won over the mom, and Clemson was the team to beat going into the 2016 season. And then he saw that Jim Chaney was not really developing Jacob Eason, who got worse as the season went on. And that's when it started to trigger with Trevor. Okay, I think Clemson's probably going to be the team, and that's who won out.
The interesting thing was that Georgia people, at the time, I think were worried about Alabama. And my understanding was that Trevor was a total no-go with Nick Saban. And I don't know that it didn't work. That's my understanding. Do you have insight on that? Why did it not work out with Alabama at all? He was closer to Alabama. Well, he was as close to Alabama in terms of distance as he kind of was with Clemson.
I don't think he had the connection, and I don't think they really pushed for him the way Georgia and Clemson did. Kirby was all about some Trevor Lawrence. One of his biggest deals was, we got to get this kid, and they made it, a two-team race at the end. It was Georgia or Clemson, and he didn't win out, but I thought he did an outstanding job getting Georgia back into it and giving him a chance to land Trevor. But I think if Tennessee had like Peyton Manning as the OC or somewhere involved, that was the only shot he was even going to think about Tennessee. But if they were a stable program, they definitely would have had a shot.
See, listen, Trevor Lawrence, for all the hoopla, he won one national championship at Clemson. Everybody had him. They already had in ink that they were going to win 3 straight national championships and not lose a game. That's not what happens in college football, guys. So, he is as consequential a quarterback for Clemson. I think Taj Boyd was probably their most consequential quarterback. He certainly wasn't their best one, but he moved things forward. Trevor, at the time, with the turnover at Georgia, there was no way he was going to go to Georgia with Mark Richt and Brian Schottenheimer there. It just wasn't going to happen. And Kirby and them came in, but he committed to Clemson in early 16, I think it was, and signed. Go ahead.
I think it was December.
I meant to say early 17, but you're right. It was late. It was December 16, and then he wound up at Clemson later in the year, or later. There was a year. There was a year in between the time that he committed and was on campus. He played. 18 was when they went with him. So it was anyway. So he commits, and I mean Kirby and them totally take him at his word. I'm going to Clemson. That's what it is. It allowed Georgia to pivot immediately to Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And that's a different story for some other time, a more complex story. But it's amazing to me that they that quickly, that shows you the power that they have in their recruiting arsenal, is that they could be in a real fight. The narrative has always been that Clemson was always the place that Trevor was going to go, and that was it. And those folks don't really know what they're talking about, I don't think. It was much tighter with Georgia as soon as Kirby got there.
I will say this. I'll say Mark Richt missed on Trevor Lawrence, and I think Kirby Smart lost out on Trevor Lawrence. They didn't miss Trevor because they went all out on him, and he was their guy. And when they didn't get him, then he went to Justin Fields. But it was clear, and I've got a mad football crush on Trevor, and I have for a long, long time now. And I'm not surprised at all that he's the number one pick in the draft. I don't think you are either.
No.
Who knows what could have been? But I think the decision to go to Clemson is probably the best one. 3 and out, won himself a national title, didn't win the Heisman, but he's the number one pick.
I'll say this. Jacob and Trevor certainly knew one another, and the plan for both of them was 3 and out. So those two were never in the other's way. And, Jacob would have been gone by the time essentially Trevor would have been there. And so the plan for both of them was, hey, we're out of here. I think Trevor might have played 2 years if that were the case at Georgia. But, of course, by the time, Trevor was at Clemson, Jacob was, redshirting as a transfer at UW. So it is as the world turns with these quarterbacks. But that was a very pivotal time for everyone. And now you see that things have changed in Athens, at least with the quarterbacks, because now Georgia's starting to line guys up at quarterback. And we'll just see how it goes. We'll have more about this over on Dog Post. I feel like you have one other thing to say about this subject. No?
I don't think so. I think what I want to say is probably already written over on Dog Post. So,
well, it was a crazy. I don't know how Georgia was. Well, I know the reason, the explanation. I don't know though how you could see what Trevor was and not offer him basically on the spot. You're going to piss off Bailey Hockman? And Bailey Hockman's been at like 4 colleges by now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I do know that Trevor was not afraid of Jake Fromm. That was not a reason that he chose Clemson over Georgia or anything like that.
Neither was Justin Fields. I mean, there are a lot of background things here that that we should really push people over to the site for, because we're not going to talk about it on social media. Go to dogpost.com to find out more. Ask us questions over there.